Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita is a tough book to read, and it's a really tough book to talk about. What is the correct way to talk about the unspeakable, the rape and the physical sexual abuse of a young girl? And of course, what makes Lolita such a unique and really terrifying book is that Nabokov puts us in the head of the book's narrator, of Humbert Humbert, who is the rapist, who is the pedophile in the story. Lolita is Humbert Humbert's prison memoir. It's him sitting in prison looking back on his life. In the beginning of the book, we learn about Humbert Humbert's childhood. We learn how he emigrated to America and he finds a place to live in the household of the Hayes. That's the name. It's the name of the household, the Hayes household. The mother is Charlotte Hayes, and Charlotte has a daughter named Dolores. Dolores is 12 years old, and Humbert Humbert is immediately entranced, transfixed on Dolores. He is incredibly attracted to her. If you were to ask people, what is the most memorable, the most shocking, and disturbing scene in all of Lolita, I'm pretty sure there would be one consistent answer that keeps coming up. In my opinion, it's completely obvious. The scene where Humbert Humbert molests Lolita on the couch is such a shocking and disturbing scene, really unlike anything else in the book. I know people who tried reading the book, and when they got to the scene, it's towards the beginning of the book, they had to put it down. It's just too intense. In this scene, Humbert Humbert is home alone with Dolores for the first time, and he sets out to molesting her, to pleasuring himself with her. What Nabokov is able to accomplish in this scene is really hard to imagine. It's hard to believe. He puts us in the mind of Humbert Humbert, and he describes with such incredible language, with such vivid description, this whole experience and this whole enterprise. I'm not going to read the whole scene. I'm not going to read the most graphic parts of the scene. I wouldn't really have the stomach to do that. But I'm going to read a few excerpts from that scene. Humbert Humbert is trying to sort of hypnotize Lolita. He's sort of entrancing her, putting on the charisma so that he can get her to sit on his lap, and so he can molest her. And in the process, with this just incredible language, it's like Nabokov is able to hypnotize us and entrance us. And I want to just look at some of that now. Quote, I was in a state of excitement bordering on insanity, but I also had the cunning of the insane. Sitting there, on the sofa, I managed to attune, by a series of stealthy movements, my masked lust for her guileless limbs. It was no easy matter to divert the little maiden's attention, while I performed the obscure adjustments necessary for the success of the trick, talking fast, lagging behind my own breath, catching up with it, mimicking a sudden toothache to explain the breaks in my patter, and all of the while keeping a maniac's inner eye on my distant golden goal. Skipping a bit, having, in the course of my patter, hit upon something nicely mechanical, I recited, garbling them slightly, the words of a foolish song that was then popular. Oh, my Carmen, my little Carmen, something, something, those something nights, and the stars, and the cars, and the bars, and the barmen. I kept repeating this automatic stuff, and holding her under its spell because of the garbling. And all the while, I was mortally afraid that some act of God might interrupt me, might remove the golden load in the sensation of which all my being seemed concentrated. End quote. A little bit after this, Humbert Humbert gives us all the lyrics that he can remember from this song. Quote, oh my Carmen, my little Carmen, something, something, those something nights, and the stars and the cars, and the bars and the barmen, and oh my Charmin, our dreadful fights, and the something town where so gaily arm in arm we went, and our final row, and the gun I killed you with, oh my Carmen, the gun I am holding now. End quote. This scene is super shocking and definitely can be tough to read, but it's an outlier. After this scene, the tone of the book begins to shift. Humbert Humbert ends up marrying Charlotte Hayes, which is Dolores' mother. Charlotte Hayes ends up dying in a freak accident. Humbert Humbert comes in full possession of Lolita. He becomes her sole guardian, and he sets off with her in his car across the United States, staying in hotels and motels. And the book becomes much darker. Humbert Humbert becomes increasingly paranoid. He's afraid he's going to lose Lolita. We get a great sense of this sort of transition, this shift in tone, somewhere around the middle of the book when Humbert Humbert first has sex with Lolita, and the two of them are leaving the hotel together, and they're getting into the car. Quote, "It was something quite special, that feeling, an oppressive, hideous constraint, as if I were sitting with the small ghost of somebody I had just killed." As she was in the act of getting back into the car, an expression of pain flitted across Lo's face. Foolishly, I asked her what was the matter. "Nothing, you brute," she replied. "You what?" I asked. She was silent. Leaving Bryceland, loquacious Lo was silent. Cold spiders of panic crawled down my back. This was an orphan. This was a lone child, an absolute waif with whom a heavy-limbed, foul-smelling adult had had strenuous intercourse 3 times that very morning. Whether or not the realization of a lifelong dream had surpassed all expectation, it had in a sense overshot its mark and plunged into a nightmare. End quote. If you ask people what's so great about this book, you'll obviously get different answers. There's the sense that we're dealing with this brilliant narrator, this unreliable narrator, the way in which Nabokov can make us feel sympathy for this monster of Humbert Humbert. But for me, the answer is a little different. My favorite part of this book, the highlight of this book for me, what really to me seems like Nabokov's incredible triumph, is the way he plots the psychological unraveling of Humbert Humbert. As the novel progresses, as he becomes increasingly paranoid, as Dolores becomes increasingly independent and increasingly capable, Humbert Humbert really goes crazy. In one of the scenes where Humbert Humbert is starting to become increasingly paranoid, he talks about how he confiscates the money that Dolores accumulates to prevent her from running away. Quote, "Eventually, she lived up to her IQ by finding a safer hoarding place, which I never discovered. But by that time, I had brought prices down drastically by having her earn the hard and nauseous way permission to participate in the school's theatrical program. Because what I feared most was not that she might ruin me, but that she might accumulate sufficient cash to run away. I believe the poor, fierce-eyed child had figured out that with a mere $50 in her purse, she might somehow reach Broadway, or Hollywood, or the foul kitchen of a diner, help wanted, in a dismal, ex-prairie state, with the wind blowing, and the stars blinking, and the cars, and the bars, and the barmen, and everything soiled, torn, dead." End quote. By dropping a few choice words, by evoking the song that Humbert Humbert had used earlier in the book to molest Lolita on the couch, as a reader, I think we're suddenly struck by the full picture, a full awareness of this character arc, of how far Humbert Humbert has come from where he was, how different his reality is from what he originally imagined it would be. That earlier scene where he molests Lolita is Humbert Humbert at the height of his power, at the height of his confidence, at the height of his charisma, feeling on top of the world. And now he's struggling to survive with the reality that he's created for himself. I think if literature can do anything for us, it can give us just that kind of perspective. Literature can give us an insight into the lives that are available to us, the trajectories that lives can take, the way people can change or not change, the way we can change or not change. And I feel like Nabokov communicates that sense of perspective in that one sentence.